Hey you guys, welcome back to the YouTube channel. Today we are going to be making a circle skirt, applying the centered zipper that we had worked on previously. Without further ado, let's get started. In order to begin the circle skirt, we will have to make the sewing pattern. So first things first, grab your measuring tape and let's take the measurement of your waist. My waistline is 33 inches, so we're gonna pretend that this circle is my waist. From here, the next step is to find the radius. The radius is any point from the edge to the center of the circle. To find that, I would have to divide the 33 inches by 2 pi, and that leaves me with 5 inches and a quarter. Now, I know you guys are wondering, where did she just go just now? But no worries, I got you. I'm gonna guide you through the process and show you why we did that. Grab yourself some gift wrapping paper so that we can create the pattern. You're also going to need a ruler and a measuring tape. When you flip that gift wrapping paper to the back, there should be some lines. If there aren't any lines, all you simply need to make is an L 90-degree line. Okay, an L line as if you were graphing back in grade school. You got this. Simply make sure that it's squared. Make sure that the line is about 10 inches long. From here, you're going to maneuver over to the table. I hope you have a measuring tape that has a hole in it. I will show you why. Once you mark those 2 marking points, measure it to see how far off you are. Now, from where that hole is to the marking that I created, I will have to add 1/4 of an inch in order for it to be a whole inch. So whatever measurement I have to add 1/4 of an inch in order for it to be a full inch, since it's taking away 1/4 from the edge. Hope that makes sense. So now, the radius was 5 1/4. Whatever your radius is, mark an extra quarter to it. Therefore, I need to mark at 5 1/2. Using your sewing pen, go ahead and add the pen into the measuring tape, and that will line up with your L at the corner. And using a marker or a pencil, you can center that into the hole that the measuring tape had in order for you to mark the curvature line for your circumference. And that's going to be 1/4 of your circumference. Once you have that mark, we are going to mark your center front and your side seam. So the bottom of the screen there will be your center front, and the upper left edge will be your side seam. I wanted the skirt to be 16 inches long, so from the curvature, I marked the 16 inches, and just as we did with the waistline, we are going to flip that measuring tape around, line up the hole with the marking at the 16 inch. Once we have the marking set in place, use the safety pin or the sewing pin to anchor into the corner of the L. Once it's anchored, use your pencil or a marker to make your full quarter of a circle, and that will give you your hem. It will be even since you marked from one side and it was already measured from the waistline. Now that your hem is complete and your pattern is practically done, the next thing we need to do is to add the annotations along with your seam allowance. For the center front, you can make a small arrow going towards that line, and I want you to write on there to cut on fold. There's not going to be a seam allowance in the front because we are placing that edge onto the folded fabric for when we cut. The seam allowance for your waistline is going to be 1/2 inch. Moving on to the side seam, that will be a 1/2 inch as well. Moving on to the hem, which will also be a 1/2 inch. So everywhere on this pattern should have a 1/2 inch seam allowance for the center front pattern piece, with the exception of the center front itself. Now that your seam allowance is in place, you can actually go ahead and cut off your pattern. That way you're using a smaller space to work. Make sure that you are cutting off the actual seam allowance. So the seam allowance cut line that you've created, that's where you are going to cut. Do not cut off the seam allowance. Make sure you are cutting onto the seam allowance. Now, remember, the center front does not have a seam, so you're going to cut directly onto that line. Technically, your center front is completely done. We just need to add the annotations. That way we know what's what. But we're going to move that center front pattern over to the side and repeat the entire process again for your center back. This time, though, for your center back, the center back seam, since that's where we are going to add the centered zipper, we need to add a seam allowance there. That seam allowance will be 5/8 of an inch. Besides that, the waist, the side seam, and the hem will also be at a 1/2 inch, just like before. Alright, you guys, we are almost there. Okay, so the only thing now we're going to need to add are the actual annotations now that your center front and your center back is cut. So go ahead and grab a pen or a pencil. First thing you're going to write down is your pattern number. Make up a pattern number, whatever you want to call it, pattern 1. And then you need to label what it is. It's a mini skirt. It's a full circle skirt. The size is mini. I added the length just so that I can know how long it is. If I need to expand, I know how far out to expand from the side seam and the center front. You need to also add the location. This is for the center back. You need to add the cut amount. And the amount of times that we're cutting this piece is times 2, because you need 2 pieces. For the center front, we'll repeat the same process. It's pattern 1. It's a full circle mini skirt. The length is 16 inches. We're going to cut 1 on fold, and we're going to label this as the center front. Now, for the side seams, for the center front and the center back, you want to line them up and make sure that they fit evenly. When you line them up, you are going to overlap them. If in the event that one side is longer than the other, then make sure you trim from the hemline. You're going to trim from the hemline, making sure that both of them match up evenly. Your sewing patterns are done. Go ahead and grab a sheet of paper, and we are going to create the facing. This first pattern here is the center front. Once you line up the edge to the edge of the paper, since the seam allowance is already in place, we are simply going to mark the edge of the pattern. Once you have it marked, grab your beveled ruler. And this time we are going to measure 2.5 inches from the curve. Your simply going to measure that all the way around. Make sure to add your seam allowance annotations. Remember that the waistline is going to be a 1/2 inch. Remember that the side seam will also be a 1/2 inch, and that there aren't any seam allowance that's attached to the center front, but you will be cutting the center front on fold. We are going to repeat the same thing for the center back. Now, the center back, it does have seam allowance, so be sure to keep that in mind. You're going to line up the edge of the sewing pattern to the edge of the piece of paper for the center back along with the side seam. Once you have them lined up, you are going to trace the waistline just like we did with the center front. Once you have it traced, similar to the center front, we're going to mark it at 2.5 inches away from that curvature, just so that we have an actual parameter. Just as before, add your annotations, your seam allowance. Remember, for the center back, your seam allowance is 5/8. For the waistline and the side seam, your seam allowance will be a 1/2 inch. Grab your scissors so that you can cut your facing. For the center back, we are going to cut 2. For the center front, we will cut 1 on fold. Alright, y'all, this has taken some time, but here we are. I hope you guys keep our soldiers in prayer, the ones that are over there in Iran. It's been tough on my family because we have people that are out there. Just keep them in prayer. Send some good vibes over there so that they're safe and that they're able to come home. It's been rough. Anyway, thank you for watching. Thank you for being a part of the sewing journey. I hope that you continue to develop and grow and be the best version of yourself. I will see you next week in the actual creation of the garment, since this was just the pattern. Happy sewing!